So Sherry D invited me to this festival and then kind of neglected a little bit to tell me that there had to be a 7-minute poem. And I was in a troupe called Haiku Night in Canada, so like I write haiku a lot. So 7 minutes, I was like, holy shit. So I cheated a little bit. I have a poem in 8 parts. So I've been thinking of language. I'm a French immersion casualty. Does anyone here was in French immersion and can't speak French very well or at all? Un petit peu, that's about it, right? So this poem is called Immersions, and it's in 9 parts. And while writing it, I kind of realized that I think language is immersive, and that we're immersed in language and languages all the time. So this is kind of like all over the place, and I think that's a good thing. So we'll do that. Here we go. Immersions. I remember seeing a woman interviewed on the news back when Coca-Cola changed its recipe from original Coke to new Coke, and how she cried as she told the reporter her family loved Coca-Cola so much that her daughter's first word was Coke. And even though I was young, I found that sad and hoped that her daughter grew up. When her daughter grew up, she'd find happiness with someone named Pepsi, as that would be a modern-day Romeo and Juliet, and really the best revenge on her parents. I can't remember my first words. Who does? Though my mom tells me it was mama, which is funny since my dad swears it was dada. They agree only that when I was 3, I'd always greet everyone I met with, "You're driving me crazy." 2. People say the best way to learn a language is to have a lover fluent in that language. Though when I've tried this, I've only learned swear words and orgasmic exaltations to God, which granted were fun, though not really useful for when I've needed help with directions. What people really mean is that you will learn your lover's language not from having sex together, when as if by magic knowledge would transfer between you on a cellular level, but postcoital, I can't even say that right, postcoital and precoital, and in everyday situations that while intimate aren't necessarily sexual. Just because you can French kiss doesn't mean you can conjugate the verbs. 3. It's 1984, and while my world is not quite Orwellian, my French immersion class is learning French from a mime on an educational program entitled Salut! That salute that gets me. It's like, at the time, it seemed reasonable to learn from a mime, but later in life, my adult self will question the wisdom of learning a language from someone who never speaks. 4. My comedian friends suggest maybe if the LGBTTIQQ2S community, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, transgender, intersex, queer, questioning, and two-spirited community rearranges the letters so that the BLT appears at the beginning, it would make people think about sandwiches. And since everyone loves sandwiches, even the most homophobic people would be less antagonistic. 5. In his book about a mountain, John D'Agata writes that just outside Las Vegas, miles beneath the Yukon mountain, the US government has buried 150 million pounds of nuclear waste. But in an act of good citizenship, it decides it would be prudent to warn future generations. So they form a task force of linguists, writers, cultural historians, and anthropologists to figure out how best to communicate the dangers of the nuclear waste to folks 10,000 years in the future. They're not even sure if English will still be used in 10,000 years. And that makes me think about the difficulty I had reading Beowulf in Old English texts. How language can morph and contort even in a few years, let alone 10,000. In the end, these experts choose to use copies of Edward Monk's The Scream. But only time will tell if it works. The only certainty is when I now see that painting, I think of nuclear waste, which is shitty for me, but maybe a good omen for the future. 6. In the years prior to Canadian Sesame Street, I watched the American version, whose vignettes taught viewers Spanish. I remember one vignette in particular where a man dressed in ripped, dusty clothing crawls on the ground with one hand outreached as his parched voice repeats, "Agua, agua, agua." And years later, when a Spanish speaker uses the word agua in front of me, I feel the need to tell her that I know agua means water in Spanish, but also I need to explain the unfortunate Pavlovian response of when I hear the word agua, my arm stretches out as if I'm stranded and begging to be quenched. 7. It's sports day in 1978 at Alice Brown Elementary School, a school named after a longtime local educator who I don't know that much about, though I'm secretly disappointed as she's not as famous as Laura Secord, who also has a school named after her, where I'm sure all the kids get free chocolate. My school is divided into 4 house teams: Haida, Nooka, Salish, and Bellakula. Nobody tells me that the teams are named after West Coast First Nations. Nobody tells me my school sits on unceded land. 8. When Margaret Thatcher died, some people started using the hashtag "Now Thatcher's dead," and they give examples of how things were different now that the Iron Lady was no longer. Only some people oblivious to British politics read the hashtag as "Now that Cher's dead." And a lot of people were sad, though relieved when they realized Cher was still alive. Cher does it too every time. 9. Imagine you're a scuba instructor who has spent years devoted to teaching the merits of safety and proper underwater communication. And then imagine the first time you're underwater with a class who are hearing impaired. And they can talk underwater with their hands, just like they usually do. And you're so envious they get to share what they're feeling in real time, get to exclaim and question and remark on small details, unlike you, who must wait until you surface. Thank you.